Silence protects your plans because plans are fragile in their early stages. When an idea is born, it is like a seed placed in the soil. At that moment, it does not need attention, opinions, or exposure. It needs darkness, patience, and protection. Speaking too early exposes your intentions to forces that you cannot control. Every reaction you receive, whether positive or negative, pulls energy away from the quiet focus required to build something real. Silence keeps that energy where it belongs. Inside you, when you share your plans, you invite the world into a process that was meant to be personal. People respond from their own limitations, fears, and experiences. Some will project doubt because they failed where you are trying to succeed. Others will offer advice that sounds helpful, but slowly reshapes your vision into something weaker. Even praise can be dangerous because it creates a false sense of achievement before any real work has been done. Silence removes these distractions and allows your plan to remain pure. There is also a psychological cost to speaking too soon. When you talk about your goals, your mind often confuses expression with progress. You feel productive simply because you explained what you want to do. This creates emotional relief without effort, and that relief reduces urgency. Silence, on the other hand, creates pressure. It forces you to act because action becomes the only way to release the tension of unspoken intention. In this way, silence becomes a powerful motivator. Silence also shields you from comparison. Once people know your plans, they measure you against others, and you begin to measure yourself as well. You start watching timelines that are not yours, questioning your pace and doubting your process. This weakens discipline. When no one knows what you are building, there is nothing to compare. You move at your natural rhythm, focused only on daily improvement rather than external validation. Another reason silence protects your plans is that it prevents interference. Not all interference is intentional. Sometimes it comes as concern, sometimes as curiosity, sometimes as harmless questions that slowly pull you away from deep work. Each explanation costs time and mental clarity. Each update invites feedback. Silence closes the door to unnecessary interruptions and keeps your attention where it must remain. There is strength that grows when you work without witnesses. You learn to trust yourself because there is no audience to impress. You stop performing and start building. Your confidence becomes internal instead of borrowed from reactions. This inner strength becomes the foundation of consistency, especially on days when motivation is low and progress feels invisible. Silence teaches endurance. Plans also evolve, and silence gives them space to change. When you announce a direction publicly, you feel trapped by your own words. You hesitate to adjust even when adjustment is necessary because you fear looking inconsistent. Silence gives you freedom to refine, discard, and rebuild without explanation. This flexibility is essential for growth. Silence does not mean secrecy out of fear. It means discipline out of respect for your future. It is the understanding that not everyone deserves access to what you are creating. When the time is right, results will speak clearly and confidently. Until then, silence stands guard over your plans, allowing them to grow strong enough to stand on their own. Not everyone wants your success, even if they smile while listening to your goals. This is not a cynical thought. It is a realistic understanding of human nature. People see the world through the lens of their own struggles, limitations, and unresolved desires. When you speak about what you are trying to achieve, they do not hear your dream alone. They hear a comparison with their own life, and that comparison can quietly turn into discomfort. Some people feel threatened by growth they are not pursuing themselves. Your ambition reminds them of promises they made to themselves and never kept. Instead of facing that discomfort, they may discourage you in subtle ways. They may call your plan unrealistic, risky, or unnecessary. They may say they are just being honest, but honesty without wisdom often hides fear. Silence protects you from absorbing this fear. There are also those who do not want you to fail, yet still do not want you to rise too far. They are comfortable with you as long as you remain familiar and predictable. Your success changes dynamics. It shifts power, confidence, and roles. Some people fear being left behind, so they unconsciously try to slow you down. This resistance is rarely loud. It appears as concern, advice, or jokes that minimize your effort. Silence prevents these small cuts from weakening your resolve. Envy does not always look like hatred. Often it looks like excessive curiosity, too many questions, too much interest in your next move. When someone constantly asks about your progress, it is not always support. Sometimes it is a way of tracking you, measuring themselves against you, or preparing an opinion. When your plans remain private, envy has nothing to attach to. Sharing your goals also creates a false sense of alliance. People may cheer for you with words, but withdraw when effort is required. You may feel supported and assume help will come when needed, only to realize later that encouragement was empty. This realization can be demoralizing. Silence keeps your expectations grounded. You rely on your own discipline instead of borrowed motivation. Not everyone understands the price of success. They admire the outcome but reject the process. When you speak about what you are building, people imagine the reward, not the sacrifice. They may unconsciously resist because your commitment exposes their comfort. This can lead to passive resistance, missed support, delayed responses, or indifference when you need focus. Silence removes this friction. There is also danger in revealing vulnerability to the wrong audience. Struggles shared carelessly can be remembered carelessly. Today's listener may become tomorrow's critic. Information about your fears, doubts, or obstacles can be used to define you, limit you, or judge you unfairly. Silence keeps your inner battles yours to win. Understanding that not everyone wants your success is not about isolation or arrogance. It is about discernment. You do not need to announce your direction to feel real. You do not need approval to move forward. When you stop explaining yourself, you reclaim authority over your path. You stop seeking permission to grow. When your success finally becomes visible, reactions will reveal the truth. Some will celebrate sincerely. Others will distance themselves. Both responses are natural. What matters is that you arrive there without carrying unnecessary doubt, fear, or resistance along the way. Silence allows you to walk forward unburdened, focused, and intact. Energy grows when words decrease because attention is a limited resource. Every sentence you speak about your plans, struggles, or intentions requires mental effort. You choose words, recall details, and manage reactions. This constant outward flow pulls energy away from the inner space where focus and discipline are formed. When you reduce unnecessary speech, that energy has nowhere to go but inward, where it strengthens resolve. Talking gives the illusion of movement. Explaining feels like progress, but it is often only noise. The mind rewards expression with a small sense of relief, as if something has been accomplished. Over time, this relief weakens urgency. Silence removes this false reward system. Without the comfort of being heard, you are pushed toward action as the only outlet for your stored energy. Words also fragment concentration. Each conversation creates a mental echo that lingers after it ends. You replay what you said, how it sounded, how it was received. These echoes divide attention and slow momentum. Silence keeps the mind uncluttered. With fewer verbal exchanges, thoughts become sharper and more deliberate, allowing energy to gather instead of scatter. When you speak often, you invite opinions, and opinions demand processing. Even when you ignore advice, your mind still considers it. This internal debate consumes energy. Silence closes the door to unnecessary input. With fewer external voices, your internal voice becomes clearer, stronger, and more decisive. There is also a physical dimension to energy. Speech engages the body, breath, and nervous system. Constant talking stimulates emotional responses, excitement, frustration, defensiveness that drains stamina. Silence steadies the breath and calms the nervous system. This calm is not emptiness, it is stored power. Like water behind a dam, energy accumulates when it is not released prematurely. Silence increases awareness. When you are not speaking, you observe. Observation requires less output and more presence. You notice patterns, habits, and weaknesses that were previously hidden by noise. This awareness allows you to correct mistakes early, saving energy that would otherwise be spent repairing damage later. Reducing words also strengthens self-control. Speaking less is a daily discipline. Each time you choose silence over expression, you reinforce the ability to delay gratification. This skill transfers directly into other areas of life. Training, work, learning, where patience and restraint are essential. Energy grows because it is no longer wasted on impulses. Silence removes the need to perform. When you talk less, you stop shaping your actions to match what you have said. You are free to work without maintaining an image. This freedom reduces pressure and preserves energy that would have been spent on consistency of appearance rather than consistency of effort. There is also a deeper confidence that comes from reduced speech. When you do not feel the need to explain yourself, you signal inner certainty. This certainty stabilizes emotions and prevents energy loss through doubt and overthinking. You move with quiet assurance, conserving strength for what truly matters. As words decrease, action increases naturally. Energy that was once spent describing intentions now fuels execution. You begin to measure progress by effort instead of expression. Days feel fuller, not because you did more talking, but because you did more work. Silence becomes the environment in which energy multiplies. Focus sharpens and discipline takes root. Progress is strongest when unseen, because early growth depends on freedom, not pressure. When no one is watching, there is no performance to maintain. You are not trying to impress, explain, or prove anything. This absence of observation creates psychological safety, allowing effort to be honest rather than strategic. You work for improvement, not approval, and this purity strengthens progress at its foundation. Unseen progress allows mistakes to remain private. Mistakes are essential, but they are fragile teachers. When errors are exposed too early, shame and defensiveness appear. You become more focused on protecting your image than correcting your behavior. When progress is unseen, failure becomes a tool instead of a threat. You adjust quietly, learn deeply, and continue without fear of judgment. Working in silence also removes timelines imposed by others. Once people know what you are doing, they expect updates. These expectations create artificial deadlines that interfere with natural learning curves. You rush to show results before understanding is complete. Unseen progress frees you from this pressure. You move at the speed of mastery rather than the speed of explanation. There is also strength in unpredictability. When your efforts are invisible, there is no anticipation of your next move. This protects momentum. No one can interfere, advise prematurely, or plant doubt. Energy flows directly into the work instead of being diverted into communication. The mind remains centered on execution. Unseen progress sharpens discipline. Without external praise, you learn to continue even when motivation fades. The absence of recognition forces you to rely on structure, routine, and internal standards. This kind of discipline is resilient. It does not collapse when attention disappears because it was never built on attention. When growth happens quietly, confidence develops slowly and solidly. You begin to trust yourself, not because others believe in you, but because you have seen your own consistency. This confidence is stable. It does not rise with praise or fall with criticism. It comes from evidence accumulated in silence. Privacy also allows your identity to evolve. When people label you based on past behavior, growth becomes difficult. Unseen progress removes these labels. You are free to change without needing to justify the change. This freedom accelerates transformation because energy is not wasted on explaining who you are becoming. Another strength of unseen progress is resilience against setbacks. When no one knows your process, setbacks remain contained. You do not have to manage disappointment beyond your own. This containment prevents emotional overload and keeps you moving forward. You correct course and continue without external weight. Working unseen strengthens patience. You learn to delay recognition and trust long-term outcomes. This patience increases tolerance for discomfort, repetition, and slow results. Over time, this tolerance becomes endurance, allowing you to sustain effort longer than those who rely on constant validation. When progress finally becomes visible, it carries weight. Sudden change creates impact because it was not diluted by constant updates. People see the result, not the struggle, and the result speaks with clarity. But the true power lies not in their reaction, but in the strength you built while no one was watching. Mystery prevents interference because what is unknown cannot be controlled, redirected, or influenced. When people do not understand your intentions, they cannot form strategies around them. Silence creates a boundary that keeps your direction intact. The less others know, the fewer opportunities they have to insert opinions, doubts, or expectations into your process. Interference often arrives disguised as help. Advice is offered before it is needed, guidance is given without full understanding, and suggestions slowly alter the original vision. When your path remains unclear to others, this kind of interference has no entry point. You retain authority over your decisions and protect the clarity of your purpose. Mystery also blocks comparison. When people know your plans, they measure them against their own experiences or against others they have seen. These comparisons can distort perception and influence your confidence. By remaining undefined in the eyes of others, you avoid being placed into categories that limit growth. Your progress stays internal, guided by your own standards rather than external benchmarks. Another form of interference comes from expectations. Once people believe they know what you are doing, they anticipate outcomes and timelines. These expectations create pressure and can subtly push you toward choices that satisfy others rather than serve your long-term goals. Mystery removes this pressure. Without a clear picture, there is nothing to expect and nothing to demand. Mystery also protects against emotional interference. When others know your struggles, their reactions can shape your emotional state. Sympathy can weaken resolve, criticism can ignite doubt, and curiosity can become distraction. By keeping your inner process private, you regulate your emotional environment. Stability increases because your emotions are not constantly influenced by external responses. There is strategic strength in being underestimated. When people do not fully understand your capacity or direction, they often assume less. This lowers resistance. You move forward without drawing attention, conserving energy and momentum. Surprise becomes an advantage, not a goal, but a natural outcome of quiet consistency. Mystery encourages deeper focus. Without the need to explain or justify actions, mental bandwidth remains available for problem solving and execution. Every explanation avoided is energy saved. This concentration compounds over time, allowing you to work with precision and patience. Privacy also sharpens intuition. When external input is reduced, internal signals become clearer. You sense when to push, when to pause, and when to adjust. Interference dulls this sensitivity by overwhelming it with noise. Mystery preserves this inner guidance system. Mystery does not mean isolation from everyone. It means selectivity. Access is earned, not given freely. When fewer people know your direction, those who do are chosen carefully. This selectivity strengthens trust and ensures that any input received is aligned and constructive. Over time, mystery builds authority. People respect what they cannot easily define. Quiet progress combined with limited information creates presence. This presence discourages intrusion and reinforces boundaries without confrontation. Interference fades because there is nothing to interfere with, no open door, no unfinished explanation waiting to be corrected. By remaining partially unseen and undefined, you maintain control over your path. Your movement becomes deliberate, uninterrupted, and self-directed. Mystery becomes a shield, allowing effort to flow forward without resistance, distraction, or unnecessary influence. Mystery prevents interference because what is unknown cannot be controlled, redirected, or influenced. When people do not understand your intentions, they cannot form strategies around them. Silence creates a boundary that keeps your direction intact. The less others know, the fewer opportunities they have to insert opinions, doubts, or expectations into your process. Interference often arrives disguised as help. Advice is offered before it is needed, guidance is given without full understanding, and suggestions slowly alter the original vision. When your path remains unclear to others, this kind of interference has no entry point. You retain authority over your decisions and protect the clarity of your purpose. Mystery also blocks comparison. When people know your plans, they measure them against their own experiences or against others they have seen. These comparisons can distort perception and influence your confidence. By remaining undefined in the eyes of others, you avoid being placed into categories that limit growth. Your progress stays internal, guided by your own standards rather than external benchmarks. Another form of interference comes from expectations. Once people believe they know what you are doing, they anticipate outcomes and timelines. These expectations create pressure and can subtly push you toward choices that satisfy others rather than serve your long-term goals. Mystery removes this pressure. Without a clear picture, there is nothing to expect and nothing to demand. Mystery also protects against emotional interference. When others know your struggles, their reactions can shape your emotional state. Sympathy can weaken resolve, criticism can ignite doubt, and curiosity can become distraction. By keeping your inner process private, you regulate your emotional environment. Stability increases because your emotions are not constantly influenced by external responses. There is strategic strength in being underestimated. When people do not fully understand your capacity or direction, they often assume less. This lowers resistance. You move forward without drawing attention, conserving energy and momentum. Surprise becomes an advantage, not a goal, but a natural outcome of quiet consistency. Mystery encourages deeper focus. Without the need to explain or justify actions, mental bandwidth remains available for problem solving and execution. Every explanation avoided is energy saved. This concentration compounds over time, allowing you to work with precision and patience. Privacy also sharpens intuition. When external input is reduced, internal signals become clearer. You sense when to push, when to pause, and when to adjust. Interference dulls this sensitivity by overwhelming it with noise. Mystery preserves this inner guidance system. Mystery does not mean isolation from everyone. It means selectivity. Access is earned, not given freely. When fewer people know your direction, those who do are chosen carefully. This selectivity strengthens trust and ensures that any input received is aligned and constructive. Over time, mystery builds authority. People respect what they cannot easily define. Quiet progress combined with limited information creates presence. This presence discourages intrusion and reinforces boundaries without confrontation. Interference fades because there is nothing to interfere with, no open door, no unfinished explanation waiting to be corrected. By remaining partially unseen and undefined, you maintain control over your path. Your movement becomes deliberate, uninterrupted, and self-directed. Mystery becomes a shield, allowing effort to flow forward without resistance, distraction, or unnecessary influence. Let results speak, not explanations, because explanations weaken impact. When you explain what you are doing, why you are doing it, and how long it will take, you dilute the power of action. Words prepare people to judge before there is anything solid to see. Results arrive complete. They require no defense, no clarification, and no persuasion. They stand on their own. Explanations invite debate. The moment you justify your choices, you open space for disagreement. Others may question your logic, challenge your methods, or offer alternatives that distract from execution. Even when you are confident, repeated explanations slowly erode certainty by forcing you to defend decisions that should be strengthened through action, not conversation. There is also an emotional cost to explaining. Each justification pulls you into the mental world of others. You begin to think about how you are perceived instead of what needs to be done. This shift drains focus. Results keep attention where it belongs. They anchor you in effort, not image. Explanations create promises, even when you do not intend them to. When you describe your plans, people remember your words. They wait for outcomes based on your timeline, not reality. If progress slows or direction changes, you feel pressure to account for it. Results remove this burden. They appear when ready and speak without committing you to expectations. Results also create clarity. Words are interpreted through bias, emotion, and misunderstanding. What you mean is not always what others hear. Outcomes eliminate confusion. They show rather than tell. When something works, its effectiveness is visible. When it does not, the lesson is clear without discussion. Letting results speak strengthens discipline. When you cannot rely on explanation to maintain credibility, you must rely on consistency. This builds habits grounded in effort. Over time, you begin to measure yourself by what you produce, not what you say. This shift increases accountability and resilience. There is humility in allowing results to speak. It removes the need to convince or impress. You focus on improvement rather than validation. This humility keeps ego in check, preventing overconfidence and premature celebration. Growth becomes steady instead of dramatic. Results also command respect more effectively than words. People may doubt intentions, but they cannot ignore evidence. Quiet achievement creates authority without confrontation. It changes how others respond without requiring you to change how you speak. When you stop explaining, you also stop defending. Defense consumes energy and invites opposition. Results close arguments before they begin. They move conversations forward rather than keeping them stuck in theory. Letting results speak requires patience. You must be willing to remain misunderstood for a time. This patience strengthens emotional endurance. You learn to tolerate silence and trust process over perception. As outcomes accumulate, confidence stabilizes. You no longer feel the urge to announce progress because progress is visible. Your identity shifts from someone who is trying to someone who is doing. This shift deepens self-respect and clarity of purpose. Results also protect integrity. When actions align with values, there is no need for explanation. Consistency becomes proof. This alignment builds trust over time, not through persuasion but through reliability. In the absence of explanation, action becomes the language. Every effort contributes to a narrative written through work. Over time, this narrative speaks clearly without noise, without justification, and without interruption in the end. The message is simple but demanding. Guard your inner world. Speak less, not because you fear others, but because you respect your path. Silence protects what is still becoming. Privacy strengthens discipline. Mystery preserves direction. When energy is no longer scattered through words, it concentrates into action. When progress is no longer displayed, it deepens. When explanations stop, results begin to speak. This is not withdrawal from life, but mastery of it. Move quietly, work steadily, and allow your life to become the proof of everything you chose not to say. The essence of this message is simple but demanding. True attraction is not created through effort, persuasion, or emotional intensity. It is created through discipline, restraint, and self-mastery. When a woman detaches, she returns to herself. She stops leaking energy through neediness, reaction, and approval seeking. She becomes present instead of chasing, calm instead of reactive, grounded instead of anxious. Detachment builds inner balance, and inner balance builds confidence that does not need to announce itself. Self-control replaces emotional dependence. Presence replaces pursuit. Restraint deepens mystery. Self-respect rises when validation is no longer chased. And real power is born when emotions are governed rather than obeyed. This is not about manipulation or withdrawal from love. It is about alignment. A woman who is aligned with herself does not fear loss because she is not abandoning herself to keep someone else. She allows connections to grow naturally or fade without resistance. In doing so, she becomes steady, selective, and deeply magnetic. When you no longer need to be chosen, you are finally free to choose.